We are live as we travel the uphill road, coming to you from Black Bottom, #1 Detroit. We thank God that we have survived and now have arrived at the last stop. Living with reality, truth, and consequences. Exciting yet thoughtful conversation. Monologue, dialogue, dynamic guest, interviews. Most importantly, you, the listening audience. Live chat. Soon coming will be live call-in as we grow. Here at the last stop, we follow proven mathematical steps to its logical, biological, natural, commonsensical conclusion. Like 1 + 1 = 2, right? We all learn like that. So Dems, Repubs, Christians, Jews, Muslim, Hindu, and who do you do? Why must we compete when we all say that we believe in peace? Well, all right now, unbuckle your seatbelts. You have arrived at the last stop. I'm your host and conductor, Mansa Bay.
And it said Epstein acted alone, he wasn't a human trafficker, there was no blackmail operation, and he killed himself. Now, already when they killed Epstein, and covered this up over the last 15 years, and killed him 4 or 5 years ago, it has already been a firestorm of firestorms because of the Streisand effect. You don't know what the Streisand effect is? Barbara Streisand built this giant mansion on the beach, and she didn't want people talking about it. And when the local reporter talked about it, she attacked him. So then it got picked up by the international press. It was a giant story. And so by coming out and saying, actually, everything we told you in the past isn't true. There aren't 14 terabytes of kids getting raped. There aren't all these new flight logs and blackmail. Forget about it. Go to sleep. It went to a whole nother level. This is the big issue the general public finally understood the deep state through. And then when Trump came out in that press conference yesterday at about 11:30 Central, we'll play the clip again, and got visibly angry and then attacked the reporter, basically said, you're standing on the graves of dead kids because they've just been talking in a free-for-all discussion about the tragedy in the Texas Hill Country. I mean, that was a very unfair attack on a reporter that asked a really good question. And so the story went from mega massive to ultra massive. And so now, behind the scenes, and it's, a lot of big reporters have talked about it, I've talked to others it's happened to, they've had the FBI call them up. It's given them information in the past as a source and said, you're going to be cut off if you don't stop talking about this. Now, just like Kyle Seraphin said on Monday, high-level FBI whistleblower was his approximation. He wasn't sure yet. They've got deep staters in there giving Patel and Bongino very bad advice. In the first limited hangout, criminal prosecution of Epstein, 15 years ago in Florida by Republican U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta, it came out that he said he was told by U.S. Intel, leave him alone or slap him on the wrist. That's what he got. It was like a year in jail, only overnights in the jail. Epstein, they're in Florida. They're in the Palm Beach area. And he said, I was told he's intelligence by U.S. intelligence. He didn't say what intelligence. And he's been asked about it since then. He says, I can't talk about it. He showed all the articles, the videos. That's there. You have the head of Israel constantly, secretly trying to visit the New York facility of Epstein. Ehud Barak, he goes on and on. You have all these world leaders going to Epstein Island and Zorro Ranch. Not just American leaders. Not just political leaders, but corporate leaders, academic leaders, top scientists, bankers. And so this was an intelligence agency operation and almost everyone involved in it knew they were getting into the globalist banking cartel system that's even above the CIA. That's just a governmental clearinghouse in an initiation, just like you see in the movie Eyes Wide Shut. Just like you see with Bohemian Grove. That's just a outer part of the cult. You don't get into these organizations unless you bare minimum have sex with children. That is the initiation. And that's why Trump was always, and I've researched it, an outsider and did everything on his own with his family and was never in these clubs. But the Democrat leaders are just absolutely thick as thieves in this, and some Republicans. You know, the Dennis Hasterts of the world. I mean, he had Acosta resign as the labor secretary over Jeffrey Epstein plea deal. And it was Trump brought him in. So, U.S. intelligence, the CIA, under the Democrats and the globalists, was using these blackmail files, these initiation events, to control their people. That was the whole point of it. And then when Trump becomes president, and this time actually begins to really control the deep state, would he then release all these bankers and tech titans and political leaders and indict them all for raping children? And the argument would be, well, no, we can't do that. It'll bring down the whole U.S. government. I'm not endorsing that. That's how this works. I'm explaining what's going on. Those giant human trafficking pedophile rings, like Larry King, not the CNN anchor, Larry King, the Republican fundraiser, and in the 80s, and the operations they were running around the country, but mainly out of Omaha, Nebraska. So this isn't some new thing with Epstein. Epstein is a Mossad, MI6, CIA triple agent, and they were in charge of initiating and blackmailing high-level initiates. Again, when an MS-13 person's about to become a made member, and they tell them, okay, go kidnap a kid, take him and torture him to death for Satan, that's their main initiation to become a high-level member, they're not being blackmailed, they're joining the club. So that's how this system works. That's a fact. It's not debatable.
Okay.
So I understand the argument. I don't agree with it, but I understand the argument of this is too evil and too bad to bring out. It'll bring down the whole U.S. government. Their heads. Like political hostages.
Again, that's like, in our lessons, again, I have to repeat this, and I'll keep on repeating it over and over, that in our Supreme Wisdom lesson, question and answer, it says, why does the devil keep us apart from his social equality? Answer, because he does not want us to know how filthy he is and all of his affairs. He is afraid that when we find out about him, we will run him from among us. Socialist means a society or a group of men acting for one common cause. Social equality. I kind of paraphrase the answer there at the end, but you understand what I'm saying. So they cannot let us know how filthy he is here. Because, like Alex said, the world, their government would immediately collapse.
They're saying, we want anything in the files with Donald Trump's name released. They don't want the main thing released. No, this is a firestorm for Trump. What happened is that nothing's there. He wasn't even a sex trafficker. He didn't have any, there were no marks. There was no blackmail. When his accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, is in prison for human trafficking.
How can that be?
So, this is part of a deal.
Yeah.
that Trump made with these different factions. And I've talked to a lot of people the last few days, particularly last night and this morning, and they said, we concur with your analysis 100%. We know Israel and its intelligence operations target the U.S. heavily, target U.S. presidents specifically in Congress, and that they're heavily involved in the joint blackmail file with the CIA and MI6 with Epstein, who was a Mossad officer. Took it over from Ghislaine Maxwell's father, who was a high-level Mossad operative. And so, internally, there's that whole battle.
How is Ghislaine Maxwell in prison right now for sex trafficking, and there was no sex trafficking, there was no bribery? Gee whiz.
So what you see on the surface is not really what's going on. So I am not going to endorse any of this.
You can't.
I am simply sitting back and pointing out that this is clearly what is going on.
That's what's happening.
And people have a right to know that.
Yes, we do.
But they always keep us in these lower level debates about who was Epstein intelligence.
It don't matter.
We have all the proof. We know it's ridiculous.
Right.
And so, yes, there's that argument. Okay, well, Trump did this because U.S. intelligence was involved, and it's too embarrassing the CIA. And if it comes out all these bankers and academics and world leaders and politicians are involved in this, that will crash the stock market.
It'll crash the whole system.
But now you understand how these intelligence agencies do this so they can hold government society hostage, not just the people that have done the evil acts and have been compromised by design, willfully in most cases, willingly as initiation, but the whole culture and the country and the currency itself. Now, they have these very same networks in Europe, very same networks in the Middle East. It goes on everywhere. The British...
You see, we all are being held hostage here to this. This is why it must come out. And we, the people of the world, must rise up and demand this clear evidence that will satisfy your intellect, our intellect, that will give us the courage to build a new world based on freedom, justice, and equality.
When he was prime minister.
Oh, this man. Oh, this guy, Seville.
He said, well, I'm not allowed to kill you. And that's how it works, because she was a long-term operative, smarter, used for spying and things. But he goes, you tell David, I want a girl that's just like you. She's going to full hell, but I know that somebody else don't eat that split her on. Because what they like to do is kill you. And so, you look into Seville alone. What they would do is, I remember Gunderson telling me about this, how Satanists would get babies around the U.S. too. And of course, it came out in the UK, they were doing this. They'll have a poor woman comes in. She's starting to deliver a baby. It's only certain hospitals are controlled. They'll drug her up and for like 3 or 4 days. So, oh, your baby died. And then they take the baby and orphan it, sell it off, or they take its organs, or they take it and then rape it a bunch. Depending on what group wants it, they may send it for a black mass with the Satanists, slowly drain its blood over a night. It's a whole different ritual. Or they'll send over here people that just like to rape them to death. But the rule is they'll have handlers there that take the baby when they're done. So it's all a big industry, obviously. So, remember, Gunderson was telling me this stuff 31 years ago, and I knew he was highly decorated and high-level FBI. They wanted to be the director, when he was younger, the head of the FBI in L.A., but I believed him, but it was unbelievable. And then over the decades, everything he said has come out. Everything. Just all of it. The CIA, giant warehouse, the finders in D.C., snuff films, satellite uplinks. I mean, Videodrome, but for real. Remember Videodrome, Cronenberg movie?
You understand now that this is the last stop? Living with reality, truth, and its consequences? Come on, family. Grow up.
James Woods is, starts getting into watching this weird channel on satellite of people being tortured. He thinks he's a TV executive. He says, man, there's no budget, but I'm addicted. It's really possessing him.
Quit being so damn, petty.
Then he finally unscrambles it with his technicians, and it's not coming out as, some place in Asia. Bangkok or no, it's coming out of Des Moines, Iowa. It's coming out of.
I don't like Alex Jones.
Because they're telling you.
It's a damn what you like.
Hamburg made that movie in the 80s. They had one of those facilities with live satellite uplinks, kids getting raped and tortured, and women getting raped and tortured.
This man has the best analysis of what's going on than anybody. That's public.
They shut it down. So imagine you're Trump and you're handed this. And everybody's like, oh, release it. And you saw Bondi. Well, this isn't Epstein raping kids, but it's hundreds of kids being raped. That's their new spin. Earlier she said, no, it's Epstein. She goes, and that will never be released. Well, of course you don't release it, but you indict the people, and then you show it to the juries, and then they give them the death penalty.
Yeah, let me tell you right quick where we're coming from. If you want a pastry chef, but then we give you some pastries, but this is not pastry chef time right now. This is not no time for pastries, because we're coming with the real deal right here. Just we're gonna wrap it out. We're gonna wrap it out. So now it's time. Just go ahead and just check it out. Okay. Just check it out. Okay. Check it out. Okay. Yeah. Check it out. Check it out. You are here to have a good time. We're gonna have to change. I'm here to give so evolve. Come on, people, grow.
So, getting back to the Epstein situation, to have this information, to have it suppressed, to have the huge scandal of the Democrat-controlled FBI in New York, not releasing it to the head FBI in D.C. and the DOJ in D.C. when they were ordered to, and to have that raid basically in March where they get the material, they report it to everybody, it's confirmed, I confirm from FBI sources, it's been sent out to the field offices around the country. I'm like, this is incredible. They're really doing it. They're delivering on promises. People said, oh, it'll never happen, you watch. And I said, why would you then get all the material that's hidden by Comey and his daughter and then send it out? Well, that's because they were bringing it out, the art of the deal, in front of the deep state, saying, we're not playing around, we'll bring this out. And so that's what happened. And so people need to know what this is really all about. But you add to this Trump and Bondi shaking their fingers at press, that pro-Trump press. It's like, hey, Epstein is... intelligence, the U.S. attorney said that prosecuted the first case, which we already know. That's a pretty authoritative source. We have so many others. And now we're not supposed to talk about that? In fact, he didn't even human traffic when his partner in crime, Ghislaine, is in prison for that? That's why I said on Monday, went viral, next the Justice Department on this trajectory will tell us that Jeffrey Epstein never existed. So, why would they do this? There is no logic other than it was part of the deal, the deep state, to say, all right, to make sure you never bring this back against us again, come out and say, and put your name to it, and say, nothing exists, nothing ever happened. Jeffrey Epstein was an upstanding member of society. There was no money being given to him by anybody else, even though upwards of $1 billion was drained out of his bank account right after he died. Oh, nobody's supposed to look into that. Pam Bondi says the FBI delivered a truckload of Epstein files after she put on hard deadline. And they play the semantical rule. Well, there's no little black book that has a list of Johns, pedophiles. Was it they call them that in the book? Do you think they just have one book? So they go, oh, well, there's not a client list because maybe there's nothing listed saying it's that. But there's all the rape and the rest of it. But even the stuff she released back in March when she got set up, supposedly, with the old files was Ehud Barak and other leaders and what type of girls they liked. What girls they'd been given before. So even in the stuff the FBI released previously and a little bit of new stuff this year, there's human trafficking right there. But almost no one is buying this. And people are being told now, other prominent talk show hosts, I'm not going to name them, though some are going public, you keep reporting on this, you're not going to have White House credentials. You're not going to get invited on Air Force One. You're not going to blah, 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 blah. The FBI's doing that. Why would the FBI put itself in a position of total damage control? Because Bongino and Patel and Trump were manipulated by people telling them, shut this down, move on from this, knowing it would create a firestorm, and now the deep state will come and say, don't worry, we'll manage this, we'll control this, we'll start censoring, we can protect you. So they maneuver them into an unmitigated Streisand effect disaster. And then out from under a rock crawls the discredited Israel firsters, Mark Levin and Shapiro and the rest of them, to say, Alex Jones just hates America. Alex Jones is an actor. Everything he says is fake. Really, everything I say, I show you. So, let's remember what Trump did yesterday. It seems like 1,000 years ago with Pam Bondi to a very serious question about U.S. intelligence connections to Epstein, and then they just shut it down. That's old news. We don't want to talk about that. And then I'll show you right after the clip the articles and documents with the U.S. attorney at the time saying just that, and even in court, and then later saying, I can't address that because it's classified. Go ahead and roll it. Clip one.
Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for an American or foreign intelligence agency. The former Labor Secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Costa, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the next step?
Yeah, sure.
Could I just interrupt for
Sure.
a second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file, along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
All right, Roger Stone, an obviously confidant of Trump for 47 years, no pun intended, lives there in Palm Beach, constantly in Mar-a-Lago. Ran into Epstein, knows all the players, knows the U.S. attorney. He's been talking about this for 15 years, but I'll get to this next hour after he leaves us, but he'll be with us a little bit in the next hour as well. You got Ben Shapiro out saying, see, no intelligence links because of this FBI memo. We have the U.S. attorney that prosecuted him saying he was in intelligence, and that's why they were asked to cover up and go light on him. So here are the articles. No regrets in a very hard question. Alex Acosta defends Jeffrey Epstein plea deal. In the article, Newsweek from years ago, talks about how he was told U.S. intelligence or in intelligence. Here's another one. Jeffrey Epstein's sick story played out years in plain sight. Here it is right there. And, of course, Roger Stone recently put out this tweet. When Alexander Acosta, the U.S. attorney for South Florida, who gave Epstein a pass on sex trafficking charges, was appointed Secretary of Labor, he was asked why he would say about his handling of the Epstein case if asked about it in the U.S. Senate confirmation hearings. Acosta said, I'll tell the truth, that he worked for the CIA and the case was sealed at their request. And here he is then being asked about it and saying he can't comment. Here's the video.
One more question. Richard Lardner from the Associated Press. Secretary, were you ever made aware at any point in your handling of this case if Mr. Epstein was an intelligence asset of some sort?
So there has been reporting to that effect, and let me say, there's been reporting to a lot of effects in this case, not just now but over the years, and again, I would hesitate to take this reporting as fact. This was a case that was brought by our office. It was brought based on the facts. And I look at that reporting and others. I can't address it directly because of our guidelines, but I can tell you that a lot of reporting is just going down rabbit holes. A few more questions. Have you asked a question yet?
I have.
Okay. How about that in front of you? Yes. Sorry.
All right. So, Roger, you have been right there at point blank range with Trump for 47 years. And I hate to see Trump do things that I know are going to really cause a giant Streisand effect. It obviously has now. Patrick McDavid and others, Tucker Carlson, are saying this is an unmitigated disaster. We're not saying that to make it a bigger disaster. We're saying it so that the ongoing disaster stops, like you and I did 2 months ago when Patel and Bongino were on Fox like deer in the headlights, putting out the same ridiculous garbage. We said, look, for national security, whatever, you're going to cover it up. We don't agree with that, but shut up. And then now the pressure campaign from the FBI is happening to a bunch of prominent talk shows. I've talked to them. Some have gone public now. They're getting calls saying you're going to be basically kicked out of the White House. You're going to be persona non grata to them if you even have guests on about this. So this is not good, and it's starting to have a little bit of the Nixonian flavor to it. Roger, you were also there for that, the confidant of Richard Nixon. We got 5 minutes to break. We'll do 15 minutes with its next hour, stonezone.com. Thanks for popping on short notice, Roger. How do we deal with this?
Well, Alex, first of all, it's interesting because we reported that Alex Acosta conversation on your show only days ago, and that was a non-answer. That's because Acosta said exactly what I said he said in my 2015 book, The Clintons' War on Women. Longest chapter in that book is on Jeffrey Epstein, and I name his clients: former Governor Bill Richardson of New Mexico, former U.S. Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell of Maine, former Israel Prime Minister Ehud Barak, Stephen Hawking, the scientist, and of course Prince Andrew. So we have to assume, first of all, the international pressure on the Trump administration not to engage in full disclosure has to be enormous. However, I think this is really pretty simple. On July 8th, 2019, under the Trump administration, Jeffrey Epstein was charged in Manhattan with 2 crimes. Count 1 was sex trafficking of minors, violation of 18 U.S. Code 1591, and conspiracy to commit sex trafficking of minors, violation of 18 USC Code 371. But those grand jury testimony is sealed. Also, the search warrants are sealed. Pam Bondi can clear the air here by directing the U.S. Attorney, the acting U.S. Attorney, the interim U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York to go into federal court and ask the court to unseal those documents. They didn't indict this guy without evidence, and the evidence has to be within those documents. When Kash Patel and Dan Bongino tell you they don't have the evidence, they're not lying. Evidence was destroyed by the previous administration. They can't give you what they do not have. But the court has this information, and they should move aggressively to ask that it be unsealed.
That's a great point. And I don't know if you talked to the president yet since this firestorm went into high gear yesterday with his statement at the press conference, but what do you think the president should do? Simply call for the court records to be released?
I think he should direct his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, again, to direct the U.S. Attorney, the Southern District, to move in front of a federal judge to unseal all of these documents. They indicted Epstein on the basis of substantial information. It's a very serious indictment. And then you go to the second question of whether Epstein killed himself. We can start on this now, talk about it on the other side. But as you know, the New York medical examiner, Michael Baden, probably one of the most respected pathologists in the country, a guy who's looked at 1,000 hanging cases, examined Epstein's body and said that his injuries were not consistent with him hanging himself. I don't know how you just discard that as a fact. We also know that 2 days prior to Epstein's death, he retained a new criminal defense attorney, David Schoen, reached a retainer agreement with him on a Thursday to take over his criminal defense.
Walking with you, looking at